socially it's so unacceptable for women to speak up about this. If they say anything in favor of their own safety, they're deemed transphobic.
But there's literally no evidence at present of it compromising their safety, and there is evidence of it severely compromising the safety of the trans woman. This is fear-mongering. And this is one of the issues that I take with you. You talk about science. I ask you, where's the evidence? You give me an anecdote.
What a fucking piece of shit. Okay. This motherfucker, this scumbag, this Vaush Limbaugh has been doing nothing but contradicting himself, gaslighting, changing the subject, using a bunch of sophistry and debate tactics. And he asks her for an example or for quote unquote evidence. She gives him an example and he's like, this is why I have a problem with you. Okay, you're a bad doctor. You're a bad scientist. You just gave me an example. You didn't give me evidence. Well, right. Of course, there's not going to be a 20-year double-blind study on this subject, Vaush, because it's just happening. It's new. It's something that's happening right now. Obviously, there's not going to be any long-term studies on it, you moron.
All right, let's get back to this.
Okay.
We should just jump ahead right here to, this is where it all blows. Oh, no, let's go.
6.5 hours later.
98% of this discourse really has nothing to do with women's sports because most of it's fronted by conservatives.
See, this is where the bad faith really starts kicking into gear. Vaush is making the argument that, and it's funny that Debra Soh called him out and said, you can't even speak out on this issue without being called a transphobe. And Vaush, 10 seconds later, is going to say anyone speaking out on this issue is doing it because they're a transphobe, because they don't actually care about women's sports. They're doing it because they don't like trans people. This is fucking evil. This is totally evil. Saying that someone can't speak out about issues of fairness that they feel deep down inside them. We all have this way of understanding whether or not someone is getting a fair deal or a raw deal. Not being able to speak out when you see somebody getting a raw deal because somebody else is going to interpret that as bigotry. This is detestable.
Fairness doesn't exist.
I cannot stand the way that they've structured this argument. I mean, politically, it's expedient. Do you remember the subtitle for Dictator's Handbook? It's so perfect.
Yeah, I remember.
The Dictator's Handbook.
Don't tell me. I'm thinking
why
not
bad
the Doctor's Handbook.
Why bad behavior is often good politics.
Dictators. Let me think. I'm checking the old mind memory
the old
here. Why bad behavior is almost always good politics. I remember it.
This is what's insidious about this, because this is like the ultimate bad behavior. The trans activists have structured this debate so if you're speaking for your own personal self-interest, you're a bigot.
Right.
It's insidious, but it's definitely good politics because everyone who speaks out about this is categorized as a bigot, and it will keep people voting for them even though they're evil. She asked a very specific question about fairness.
Right.
All of this is bullshit. All of this is complete bullshit.
He said, I'm not going to answer your question.
Yeah. The number of people, he's filibustering. The number of people who are affected by this unfairness is immaterial, because when unfairness enters the world, we all know that we could be the target of that unfairness. The simple fact of its existence is what demoralizes people. And you saying, oh, it's not that big a deal, it's not hurting that many people. That's evil. That's so bad. That's so bad. And you would never make that argument. Like if a conservative came up and said, listen, this trans stuff, it just affects a very small number of people. We shouldn't really worry about it. You'd fucking lose your mind. Yep. You would lose your mind. Listen, you're literally trying to find that one gender dysphoric kid. So you're prepared to ruin the entire Western civilization to find that one kid. Okay. This whole, it only affects a small number of people argument is not something you can make. You can't make it in good faith.
Well, especially when he's making the argument about why his argument is that all society should change for the sake of this tiny minority of people.
Yes.
And now that there's a different minority of people, he's like, well, it doesn't matter.
Yes. Yes. It's such bullshit. It's bold face sophistry.
Right.
Well, I would argue this isn't a conservative or Republican issue, because there are definitely Democrats who are concerned as well. And this is, I interviewed Kara Dansky about this for my podcast, and people can go listen to that. And she said this is going to be the issue that brings the parties together, because this is not something, it's not a left or right issue, nor do I think it should be. Your point about how there are only 5 cases, there have definitely been more than 5. I mean, I could count them right now.
Of upsets? Because normally it's just a trans woman being in sports that people get upset over. But in terms of the overperformance, I think generally they perform well within the lines of expected cis female performance.
Well,
it's definitely
they
a
win
Republican
though.
thing.
They win by quite a margin, do they not?
The number of times that trans women have won by quite a margin in sort of college athletics or above is, no, for the most part, usually this upset happens before they've won anything. Usually it's just them participating at all. I remember there was that I think they were.
What a dishonest pivot.
Well, it's also not even true. Usually no one even knows.
The upset is them winning, not competing. She was very specific about that. Taking someone's record is the upset.
But what he's saying isn't even true. I mean, I can only think of one example where it had to do with competing, and it was when it was like the inverse situation. It was when a trans woman, no, it's when a cis woman who was taking male hormones had to compete against cis girls in a high school or something, which was the opposite situation.
Right.
That's the only time I remember, like, before anything even happened, people were like, ugh. And then obviously, she won because she's literally taking steroids.
Testosterone. Yeah.
Right. But no, like, people don't know about this shit or care about this shit or hear about it until the person, breaks
Wins a
records,
record.
starts winning, by a lot. And then everyone's like, whoa, what's going on here?
Right. There's at least 5 cases of records being demolished.
Or track and field. And they did a whole documentary, and the trans woman, wasn't she came in like 6th or something. The woman who was mad came in 8th or 9th, and it was the top 8 who were qualifying, and she was mad over that, something like that.
How dare these women get mad? See, that's what optically this is horrible. How dare these women get mad about women's sports? Did you hear?
Go back, here, let me go back 10 seconds, and he realizes what he's about to say is stupid, and he tries to cover it up.
All right.
Just them participating at all. I remember there was that I think they were track and field, and they did a whole documentary, and the trans woman, wasn't she came in like 6th or something. The woman who was mad came in 8th or 9th, and it was the top 8 who were qualifying, and she was mad over that, something like that. It's like, again.
Okay, let's think about this real hard.
She lost her spot, her qualification spot.
Yeah, there you go. You just skipped to the ending. Yeah, of course. That's why she's mad. She's like, oh, why does she care? This is a trans woman who got 6th. She didn't even get 1st place. Because she knocked the person out of the spot, Vaush. That's why she's mad.
She lost her fucking scholarship.
Yes.
Yeah. Tangible financial reward was taken from her and given to someone else.
Yes. Oh, my God.
It's so silly. I can't believe. Why would you even care about this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Take a look at any other issue. If this is what unites the parties, then America deserves to burn. We have infrastructural issues. This is where I lost my mind. This whole idea that we have bigger fish to fry when your entire channel is devoted to culture war issues.
Yeah.
I mean, Vaush is not making videos about universal health care here. He's not making videos in that vein. He's making videos that dunk on conservatives in culture war issues.
Right.
We can't feed or clothe our people. Our healthcare system is broken. If our party is united,
and also this is a totally fallacious, dumb fuck argument that he's making, because it's not that, oh, women, trans women in sports is such a big issue that the parties are united against it. That's not what she means. That's not what anyone means when it says it unites the parties. What they mean is that the opinions on it, the public opinion on it, is one way. Okay, it doesn't mean it's the most important issue. It means everyone agrees it's one way. Because when you talk about these broader issues, like we need to clothe everyone, we need to feed everyone, we need healthcare for everyone. It's like, okay, everyone is on board with making these things better, but they all disagree on how to do that.
Great point.
Vaush Limbaugh. Okay, so this comparison you're making is dumb.
United not over any real issue that affects like the American people, but issues so marginal that you can count on one hand the number of trans athletes per state. I think that's really indicative of how much of a divide there is between like the cynical political messaging that's used in Washington and what Americans actually need to get by day to day.
So and again, arguments with
about
this too.
We're up to like 9
Yeah,
whataboutisms.
9 whataboutisms. They make the same argument about CRT and the Don't Say Gay bill. And I always say, I'm like, if it's such a non-issue, if there's so much more important issues to talk about, then why don't you just give the Republicans the win on that one and then move on to those important issues so that the Republicans can't talk about them?
Right.
It's so dumb because, and I've said this like a million times, the Republican Party would be in trouble if it wasn't for the culture war shit, because they'd have to try to balance the neocons, the neoliberals, and the populist Republicans who all want different things.
They can't win on economic issues, that's for sure.
Yeah, they can't. Why do you think it is that there was so little movement on economic issues for 4 years under Trump?
Well, they did get a huge stimulus passed and all that stuff.
No, but in terms of Republican policy, with the exception of the tax cuts, there was no movement at all on broad economic issues whatsoever.
They didn't get I thought Trump got the wall built. What are you talking about? The big beautiful wall.
There you go.
My big beautiful wall.
The wall that didn't get built. Yes, exactly. And it's the same thing right now under Biden. What is the Republican plan to fight against inflation?
What is a Democratic plan to fight against inflation? There is
none. Right, exactly. What is anyone's plan to fight against inflation?
We're fucked.
I don't fucking know. No one's talking, but no one has a plan. And it's because we're all bogged down, and we're all bogged down in the culture war shit. And the problem is, it's the left that's been fermenting this culture war shit for the past 5 to 6 years. And so they basically created this environment, and now Vaush is complaining about it. It's like they created the swamp to mire everyone down in it so they wouldn't focus on important issues. And now that everyone's mired in the swamp, they whine and say, oh, why are you miring us down in this fucking swamp of the culture war? It's like, you made this fucking swamp. You dug this hole. You filled it in with this fucking putrid filth water. And now that we're all swimming in it, you're complaining that we're fixated on this fucking swamp.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about universal health care, to be honest with you, but nobody cares.
Yeah, it would be, you know what? It'd be fantastic. It'd be fantastic if wokeness went away and fucking bread tube disappeared in the fucking ether, and no one took Marxism and neo-Marxism and cultural Marxism, all this garbage seriously ever again. That would be fantastic.
Then
we could actually talk about real things that are important. But guess what?
Dig that.
This shit is important because this shit is going to destroy everything. So no, it is important. Until it goes away, it's important. Okay.
It's gonna go away.
Yeah, I think it will. But until it does, it's important.
Bread tube's dying, and it's going to be beautiful.
It has to be fought against.
All right, now shut up.
It's just
I got 1 hour left on this video.
Yeah,
because I can just think of any other, like, do the people who claim to care about, college women's sports, do they care about like college athletes being exploited, not being paid for their work while the colleges make millions of dollars off of the
What about
broadcast.
What about ism
tens of
again?
thousands of people
What
every year. No,
about
of course
ism?
not.
Dun,
Just
dun,
it's the
dun,
trans
dun, dun.
athlete thing, and we get this
Well-
one big story every 6 months.
Can we go to that Connecticut track? So one of the trans girls actually did win first place in the 102 meter dashes.
In the initial, wait, one of the
Mm-hmm.
are we thinking of the same one?
Yeah, I don't want to say her name just because I don't want people to bully this person. I don't want people to go after the individual athlete. To me, this
What a transphobe. She won't even say the name so people won't bully her. God, what a bad faith homophobe transphobe. Jeez.
is more about the larger trend of what we see happening, right?
Well, in terms of oh wait, there were two. Okay, we might be talking about different ones.
There's so many of them that they're talking about different ones.
Require more data points. Again, like the harm we're talking about here is like maybe a couple of cis women have placed that this is
winning.
I'm sorry. The idea that you can justify national.
This is very interesting. This is the first part in our 45-minute conversation. Okay, and I'm going to go back a little bit where Debra starts pushing back on something. And, she has a very mild temperament and tone of voice. And just her pushing back on anything, and Vaush immediately becomes agitated. If you look at the total demeanor and tone of voice changes just by her pushing back and pointing out the fact that he's not addressing the question.
Yeah, she should have done this from the get-go. Her opening question should have been, Vaush, define woman for me. Seriously. I'm telling you, we should have just moved to the 45-minute mark because the rest of this debate is insane.
The opening question should have been, how are you defining, how are you saying that gender is a social construct? And then he gives his bullshit answer. And then you say, wait a minute, how are you defining woman? And then he gives his completely contradictory answer. And then you say, what the fuck? You just completely contradicted your first answer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just want everyone to notice how like his tone of voice just changes completely. Just because she's like pushing back even slightly.
He's so bent out of shape.
Yes.
But then he goes completely bad faith because of it. Watch.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I mean, a trend on a national scale would just require more data points. Again, like the harm we're talking about here is like maybe a couple of cis women have placed that this is
winning.
I'm sorry. The idea that you can justify national outrage based on a handful of cisgender women in college placing lower than they might have otherwise is insane to me. Every other problem imaginable is more worth national consideration. If this was just being discussed in academia or like sports science or whatever, I think that's fair game.
It's so insane because make this same argument with police brutality. Just do it. Do it, Vaush. Do it. Make the same argument. The thing that you're so outraged over just a couple of people getting beat up. It's so ridiculous.
But what he's saying is insane because he just said, well, if this is a conversation happening in sports academia, then fine, they can have it. Okay. It's like, okay, well, my response to that is, well, guess what, Vaush? We're a couple of dipshits on the internet. Well, I guess Debra Soh isn't. She's a fucking, a sex researcher. So it is kind of entirely relevant to her fucking field of study, Vaush. So actually, no, it does make sense for her to talk about this with you. Debra Soh is not the Republican Party. She's not the Democratic Party. She's not indicative of any larger movement. She is just an individual talking about something relevant to her fucking field. So answer the fucking question and stop dodging it.
Yeah, and not only that, this all took place because she went on the Joe Rogan podcast to talk about relevant research in her own field. This is actually leave it to academia. And some dipshit on the internet decided that they were going to fucking target her with transphobia and call her out to 300,000 people in their own audience.
That's a great point.
Yeah. What the fuck? Who made this a culture war issue? Who's the one attacking academia for making this? They get into it more too. Here, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting subject and there is, reason for concern there. But this like people act like this is some kind of defining issue, like the phrase there, this will unite the parties. Why? If infrastructure couldn't, I mean, our bridges are crumbling. If healthcare couldn't, tens of thousands die. If the fentanyl
But I would argue,
epidemic.
I don't want to cut you off, but I would argue that this is
Cut
just
him
the
off.
beginning of some larger. This is a huge problem because it's going to be the end of women's sports. And I also see look at what's happening in prisons. Look at what's happening in terms of where people are being housed in, say, hospitals, and women are now vulnerable to sexual assault as a result of this because people are self-identifying as
Where's
women.
the evidence of that happening?
Of the hospital in the UK, there was a case of a woman who was on a women's ward, and she reported a rape, and they said, oh, that didn't happen because there are only women on this ward. And then they went back and they actually found through security footage that there was actually a trans woman staying on the ward during that time. And so this woman had indeed been allegedly raped. And so I'm not saying that trans women are predators. Well, but this is something.
Where's your evidence for that? Well, actually, it happened here. But it's just a single case.
Yeah, it's got to be at least 20 rapes before Vaush even gets out of bed.
Listen, yeah, until we have a 10-year double-blind study on rape on this specific topic in this specific area, I don't believe you. And this isn't an important topic whatsoever. Okay.
Tell that to the woman that was raped, Vaush.
Yeah.
Something that we're seeing is much more is going to be much more common.
Well, with respect, absolutely not.
Not of trans women, but of men abusing the ability to identify as women.
This is
to
fear mongering, and this is one of the issues that I take with you. You talk about science. I ask you, where's the evidence? You give me an anecdote.
What a fucking piece of shit. Okay, this motherfucker. This scumbag, this Vaush Limbaugh, has been doing nothing but contradicting himself, gaslighting, changing the subject, using a bunch of sophistry and debate tactics. And he asks her for an example or for quote unquote evidence. She gives him an example, and he's like, "This is why I have a problem with you. Okay, you're a bad doctor. You're a bad scientist. You just gave me an example. You didn't give me evidence." Well, right. Of course. There's not going to be a 20-year fucking double-blind study on this subject, Vaush, because it's just happening. It's new. It's something that's happening right fucking now. Obviously, there's not going to be any long-term studies on it, you moron.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Keep this in mind, too. It becomes very interesting a little later on when she asks him for evidence. And he gives his evidence.
Yes.
Very telling.
Where's the evidence of this?
What was the anecdote, though? This was reported in the news. This was reported in the news.
Rapes happen everywhere. One instance is not an evidence of a pattern. And by the way, England, up until recently, had a very prejudiced law where rape could only happen through penetration. Nothing else was counted rape, So if you're a man, you rape a woman, that can be counted.
Going crazy on the whataboutism train here. Jesus Christ.
Whataboutism.
I know. I got the counter out just because it's off the charts now.
What's that have to do with it? This has nothing to do with anything.
Rape cis women.
And also, I'm pretty sure, because I remember I looked into this a while ago. I don't remember exactly, but it's like, the whole woman couldn't rape. It was like, it was like called like sexual assault in the third degree or something. Like there was some category, women could still be, found guilty of sexual assault. Okay.
In England, and it wasn't counted as rape because none of the available equipment was present. The idea
I believe I don't want to interrupt you, but I see we're coming so close on time, and there's so many things for us to talk about. So I just say that I think. Say with prisons especially, this is happening. It happened in England, it's happening in Scotland, it's happening in California.
I'll tell you this much. We don't have evidence that letting trans women into cis women's prisons will increase sexual assault. To my knowledge, there's no evidence of that upticking in an actual, like, here's a percentage, then here's a change percentage sense. We do know that trans women who go to men's prison are like 9 times as likely to be raped. So purely from a harm reduction perspective, and this goes the same with the bathrooms and the hospitals and what have you, putting trans women in the same spaces as men is demonstrably dangerous, whereas putting them in the same spaces as women is circumstantially dangerous so far, only looking at given accounts or once.
Okay, so pay attention here, because he just laid out the argument that men are more dangerous than women. We all heard it, right? Clearly, that's the argument that he's making.
Yes.
The men's space is much more dangerous than the women's space.
Right.
Okay.
Specific bit or another.
But does that not matter that women's safety is being placed at risk as a result of that?
By putting trans women in men's prisons, I agree completely.
And why is it, but there's socially, it's so unacceptable for women to speak up about this. If they say anything in favor of their own safety, they're deemed transphobic.
But there's literally no evidence at present of it compromising their safety, and there is evidence of it severely compromising the safety of the trans woman, who also deserve to not be raped.
How can you say there's no evidence when there are women saying that this is happening to them? We see this happening in prisons.
I'm sorry, are you a doctor? Wait, are you a doctor? That's not how you form.
I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, but I can do statistics.
No. That's not statistics. Evidence of news cases. I can find news cases of anything happening anywhere.
Okay, there was a study in the UK of unisex.
I'm familiar. Oh, sorry, please.
Of unisex changing rooms and how this did actually increase. I have it in the end of gender. I can't think off the top of my head the statistic, but it did actually increase the sexual assaults.
But that's not trans women.
She totally fucked up there too. She should have said, I am a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Why? You're not dealing with a good faith actor here, Debra.
No.
Don't say I'm not a medical doctor. Say, I am a doctor.
Right.
Are you a doctor? Thank you for asking. I am a doctor, actually.
Well, later in this conversation, we find out that Vaush is either fucking lying or doesn't understand anything about how research is funded or done.
No,
because
of course not.
He doesn't understand, or pretends like he doesn't understand, that if someone at a college says, hey, I want to study, whether either trans women or men pretending to be trans women is increasing sexual assault in women's spaces.
Yeah, you're not going to get any funding for that.
Yes. That person's in trouble with their research. Let alone they wouldn't even be able to secure funds for that research unless they posit from the beginning that they're going to try to debunk the claim.
This is just a weird thing, because it's just every argument he has is just a dipshit argument, a total dipshit argument.
Well, that's not weird. That's standard for him.
We're in this weird situation though, where this person is gaining, social relevance with people in a way that they're going to be making decisions based on this.
Right. On dipshit arguments.
And the decisions that you're making here, I mean, we're not talking about creationism, okay? We're not talking about the kind of decisions you make when you think the world is 6,000 years old.
Yes.
Which I don't think, I'm hesitant to, is there a decision that you can make when you think the world is only 6,000 years old that's going to tangibly affect your life? I'm not sure there is. Like, maybe you're not going to go into geology, right? But this is like, you're going to make big decisions here.
Well, I don't agree with that at all. I think that's bad. Because
big life decisions.
If you believe that the world's only 6,000 years old, you're discrediting evolution and everything that comes with that.
So you think that's bad?
I think that's a big fucking deal.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm saying
And
at the
you should
individual
too,
level.
but, I don't know. I don't want to make those comparisons. Okay, we're in favor. We're team truth.
We're
okay?
team truth. Exactly.
Yeah, let's stick with what is true. Okay. I don't like.
Did I do a whataboutism? I think maybe I did. So.
Well, it's not a whataboutism, but I think it's like Vaush does this thing, which I think is very disingenuous, or the wrong way of thinking about things, where he says, "Oh, I don't have to address whether something is true or not. I only have to address whether it causes harm in society." It's like, okay, but you've just reframed the entire talking point, the entire conversation. And when whether things are dangerous or harmful to society is somewhat up to the eye of the beholder.
Right.
And so that's why I try to focus. That's why, we try to focus on what is actually true. Evolution is true. Now, you shouldn't make moral prescriptions based off of it, but you have to use that information to determine, how to look at the world and how reality works, essentially.
Women that's men and women.
You do it. You
That's men
press
and
the
women.
button.
But the self-identification aspect opens the door. No, I'm not saying it's trans women who are doing this. I'm saying, but it's opening up the door to the possibility. And I'm totally there with you. I think we do need to have the evidence, right? There should be proper studies done. But how will those studies be done in this climate? Do you think that it would be even possible?
Easily.
Do you know how outraged people will be that you would even consider that gender self-identification may potentially lead to these outcomes?
It's not controversial to study these things in the sociological fields. There's often been a claim.
Such a dipshit. Not only that, didn't Debra Soh get canceled for studying these things?
Oh my God.
Pretty sure she got canceled over some research she did that rubbed feminists the wrong way.
Is Vaush lying, or is he just a dumb fuck?
Dumb fuck. I'm going
Okay.
with dumb fuck, yeah.
You can go with dumb fuck, because that is an insane thing. I know people, and there are probably some people in the chat who are in the field of sociology, and they talk about how it's just overrun with woke shit. And
Yeah.
if you're some kid, or if you're a new person, or even if you're not a new person, remember there was the black Harvard sociologist that got canceled because he was coming, he said that black people were not shot disproportionately by police on average. And he was basically, even though he had tenure, he was removed from Harvard for 2 to 3 years under some bullshit circumstances. That was obviously politically motivated. And only someone who's completely not familiar with academia could make such a bafflingly stupid dumb fuck statement to say, oh, you can go in these fields and study whatever you want. It's like these fields are highly steeped in politics.
They're politicized, yeah.
Yeah, in politicization of the topics. And they're all highly steeped in the politics of whatever the college or the institute is that's studying them entirely. And so, no, you can't just study whatever the fuck you want, okay? I guess if you're like if you're independently wealthy, then you can do whatever the fuck you want. But most researchers aren't independently wealthy. They have to get grants. They have to get, money from institutions and colleges and whomever to do these studies.
Well, you know why the college doesn't want to fund the study? Is because they know that there are dipshits on the internet. It doesn't matter how well you do the research.
Yes.
If they don't like the outcome of the research, they're going to go to their 400,000 subscriber channel and they're going to say all sorts of lying, incendiary shit about you. And 300,000 people are going to watch that video and they're going to start calling the college and making their lives a living hell. And therefore, they just don't want to go down that road. They're like, can't we just study something not so controversial? Like Vaush is literally the problem here. So I don't see how he sees that he is the problem and understands that. I mean, if Vaush is oblivious to the fact that he is the problem, he's living in the dream world where all of this is all of his actions don't affect anyone negatively in any way, shape, or form. That's the dream world that Vaush lives in. Right. This is the thing about this video. He lays out that dream world pretty articulately.
Right. I mean, David Shore was canceled because he said, hey, rioting helps Republicans win elections.
Yes.
That was all it took. And yet, no, you can study whatever you want in the sociology field. I don't know what you're talking. It's like, is he just this delusional? I mean, you're right. Maybe he got his sociology degree from some,
Humble.
weekend school.
I told you, Humble is the party university.
Right. He's no, and I'm assuming, I think it's just a normal undergrad degree. Okay. So I don't know how he thinks he's some fucking knowledgeable on this subject. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I didn't, talk about doctoral theses and psychological research papers and the politics of the institutions with my fucking teachers in my undergraduate study of psychology. Like, this is such a bafflingly stupid fucking take.
It's a baffling, stupid take of just how things work.
From, not to draw a comparison, race realists, people of the position that different races are of different inherent.
And then he does the race thing, which is so fucking dishonest. He wants to say basically, he wants to say that studying sex is equivalent of studying race and IQ, which is completely fucking numbskull.
Levels of intelligence. That the reason the scientists won't publish the study.
We're not having a public health crisis with false positives over race and IQ. Okay. Like, there's a reason. There's a tangible reason for actual legitimate scientists to get in there and start doing some real studies on what's going on. People's lives are being affected by this. Nobody's fucking life is being affected by the race and IQ nonsense. It's fucking garbage.
Of course, they do publish the studies, but this is the narrative. They won't publish the studies is because there's some sort of internal pressure against, like they can't do it. It's the PR is too bad. They won't be allowed to. In reality, sociologists do whatever the hell they want. It would be actually quite trivial to see whether or not instances of documented sexual assault increase significantly after the change of a policy. You could do it without even really tackling the trans. You wouldn't even have to introduce any discrete categories, only reports. But as of the moment, we're in a situation now where trans women, we know they're far more likely to be abused if they're placed in men's spaces. We don't know that there's an increase in harm predicated on them being put.
He just disproved his entire fucking point. Why is it that we quote unquote know that trans women in male spaces is dangerous?
Yeah, we haven't studied it.
Don't know that trans women, or allowing people to claim they're trans women, increases dangers in women's spaces. Why do we not know that, Vaush?
Yeah. Where's your double-blind study?
Why don't we know that? Could it be because one of these things is acceptable to study and one of these things is not acceptable to study?
Right. It's a little post-hoc rationalization going on there.
And there's a big problem too, which is that, like, who wants to get into a field where they're basically, like, when people get into these fields of research, okay, they want to, get tenure. They want to further their degree and their, status. And they see the fucking writing on the wall. These people are fucking stupid. They know that if they go down certain avenues of research, these get you blacklisted as being one of the bad ones, okay? And they know what's going on here. This is so ridiculous. This is such a preposterous argument.
Women's spaces, environment, to me, the idea that, we should just ignore the evidence, ignore the science, and go like, oh, well, keep trans women in men's spaces. It's just lunacy to me. I mean, why?
So he's basically saying there is no research, yet we should follow the science. What a fucking dick.
What about offenders who identify as male up until the point where they are arrested? Once they go into custody, they identify as female. So these are, say, sexual offenders who have raped women, who identify as female. They're going to be housed in a women's prison. And then we do see that some of these male-born rapists who are housed in women's prisons because they identify as female then go back to identifying as male once they are released into the community. And I for people listening, I mean, my audience knows this, but for people who may not be aware, I used to work with violent offenders and sexual offenders. So I do have experience working with forensic populations, and this is where my concern is coming from, because I know that these people are very antisocial, and they would.
She's like, oh no, I literally did work on this exact topic, and you're just some fucking dipshit on the internet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, not only that, Vaush has never been around really psychopathic people. It's just.
Well, that's not true. What do you mean?
Well,
he's around one every day, Adam.
The kind of people who are. I mean,
he's around a psychopath every day.
I think you could make the argument that Vaush definitely has dark triad traits. I don't know that he's the type of person that would physically harm people. But I'm sure you've been around people that are just Like they're danger to society.
Not regularly, but I've interacted with people like that, and I've been like, oh, I need to not interact with this person ever again.
Yes,
like, this is a dangerous person.
Debra Soh, you're the court appointed psychologist is dealing with those types of people quite often.
Right.
Quite often. The people that normally nobody in society deals with because everyone knows I should not interact with this person ever again.
Right.
Vaush has never had to interact with that type of person for a job or anything. So he just lives in this Pollyanna world where those people don't exist. Those people exist. Yeah. This is where it gets funny.
He's going to give a total BS answer and dodge the question.
Well, and totally contradict himself from earlier, if I remember correctly.
Do whatever they have to do to get access to more victims. So does that lead to a pause in your mind in terms of, I agree with you, and I am concerned about trans women being housed in men's prisons and being at a greater risk of being violated. But I, at the same time, don't think it should be, okay, well, then we'll just, anyone who wants to go into the women's prisons or into women's spaces should be allowed to, without question.
I think it's an interesting hypothetical, but one which at moment doesn't bear much statistical relevance. It's sort of like what about someone faking going into the restrooms or what have you, though obviously this is a bit more significant because instead you'd be housed in a prison for some time. The question is, to what extent would a person be willing to do such a thing? People have pretty strong attachments to their gender identity. And, as a man, I can't imagine I'd be very comfortable in a women's prison. I mean, if you could cartoonify the whole thing.
It's more posh, though, for you.
It is.
He wouldn't be comfortable in a women's prison. Let him go for a little bit more because he hasn't made his contradiction yet.
Wait a minute. He just said, as a man, if he had to choose between going to a prison of other men or a prison of women, he doesn't think he'd be more comfortable in the women's prison.
Oh, I know. It's ridiculous on the face of it. It is.
When he's already said that men are way stronger on average than women.
Right. Yeah, no, Vaush is going to get physically assaulted and or gang raped in his first week in prison. Yes.
You're not going to get, probably not going to get gang raped in the women's prison.
There's not.
Okay.
Technically, there's not a lot of violent offenders in the women's prison. But
even if you put him in the most violently offending female prisoners, you can still get shanked. But everyone's going to choose to be with the more when you're in prison and you have a safety concern for your own well-being. Who's not going to choose to be part of the population that has the less safety concern that is safer? Who's going to not choose that? Or that they can, rely more on their natural strengths. Or if they just want to fuck someone, they could be in a situation where maybe they could hook up with someone on top of that too.
Debra Soh,
consensually.
Debra Soh's demeanor says it all. She's basically just saying, you can't be this full of shit.
It's so ridiculous.
Her response is basically, you can't be this full of shit.
Yes.
But as a man, I can't imagine I'd be very comfortable in a women's prison. I mean, if you could cartoonify the whole thing.
It's more posh, though, for you.
It is, but it's not as though prisons for either sex are particularly accommodating. This is a hypothetical concern, which I think warrants real discussion. I do think there's a legitimate possibility of predation based on these preconceptions, but I have to go where the evidence follows, or where the evidence leads me, I suppose. I have to follow. And at the moment, the greatest concern that we have actual evidentiary claims for is with regards to the safety of trans women. And if it does turn out there ends up being some significant issue of these fake, rapes going up because of people fake identifying or whatever, then I think it would warrant examination. I imagine the easiest solution would just be to impose the same standards that people do for medical transition. which is that you have to live as your gender for a given length of time before they'll allow for stuff like bottom surgery, meaning that if
true scum.
How's that true scum?
Because he argued earlier, and this is what's so dumb, that gender is just how someone, the identity that somebody chooses.
Okay? Oh, you're right. He's going against gender identity right here. He's saying that you actually have to biologically transition.
And so why? And this is what Debra's alluding to. This is what everyone's alluding to, even if it's not happening in mass yet. But it will inevitably happen because people always take advantage of the system. It just takes a while.
Violent, psychopathic criminals are going to take advantage of the system.
Shocking. Okay.
I can't believe this.
If I'm a career criminal, and the only reason this isn't happening yet is because people that are career criminals are not intelligent enough or knowledgeable enough that this is going on to do this anyway.
I disagree. I feel like they're always a step ahead. If they can do it, they'll do it.
No. They're a step ahead of like the law, but this conversation hasn't trickled down yet to like the mainstream audience. Okay. Because if all it takes is self-affirmation of gender, if that's all it takes, which is what the gender activists want, okay, it doesn't have to be sex offenders. Every criminal around can just simply say, I identify on my government license as a woman. Because if you say I identify as a woman and it doesn't change anything about your daily life whatsoever, except if you get arrested, you go to female prison, why would you not choose that option?
Of course you would. Yes.
Of course. Exactly. Of course you would. So it's almost like we need stricter guidelines. And simply saying you have to live your life as a woman for 9 months, what does that mean?
Well, I'm living my life as a woman right now because I changed my driver's license 6 months ago.
Exactly. What do you mean? You live your what do you mean live as a woman? I don't even know what that means. You just said living as a woman is some identity choice that people make. Or we had the fucking people, and he basically gave the same answer in this and in the other video we watched as the two people on the Dr. Phil show. When they said, well, what does it mean to be a woman? And they said, well, you have to be a woman. I can't explain that. Only women knows, what it means to be a woman. It's like, okay, well, I guess what? I identify as a fucking woman now. I'm not going to change a single fucking thing about my appearance or my life. And if you have any problem with that, you're a fucking transphobe.
Yeah.
Like, you have to answer these questions because these will come up. And this is the problem. People with hypotheticals are testing the validity and the logic and the consistency of these theories, and they're all bullshit. None of them.
But I have to go with the evidence that's already available, Sitch.
Okay.
I have to. Obviously, I think your study is statistically unviable for a lot of different reasons.
I see. Okay. No, sure.
This is all bullshit. I know it's total bullshit.
You're a rapist and you've been living as a woman for several years before being arrested. That seems like a fairly compelling bit of evidence right there that you might actually be a woman, unless you were anticipating being arrested and being sent to jail, years.
If you're a rapist, you're probably anticipating being sent to jail at some point in your life. How does Vaush not understand this?
No, but why would everyone? There's almost no reason. I can't even think of one. I can't think of a single reason.
I know I'm going to do it just in case right now. Just in case.
Right.
I'm brought up on some fucking trumped up January 6th charges or something. I'm like, honey, I'm living as a woman now.
Yeah. All you have to say is I'm a woman on your, my government ID. Okay. And it doesn't change anything about you. There's no reason not to, because you'll go to the women's prison. You won't have to sign up for the draft.
Yeah. That's a good one too. Shit.
You can take out.
Where do I sign?
You can take out loans or get government protections that affect women specifically.
Oh, that's true. I'm an oppressed class now.
Yes. There's no negative penalty that is incurred by doing this. You only benefit from it.
Look, I can tell people I'm gay married. Holy shit.
There you go. You're oppressed all of a sudden.
I'm gay. I can be gay married. I'm a woman married to a woman.
I think we should come out as women, Adam. I think
know.
I'm gonna have to put on the Sitch Chan avatar, and you're gonna put on the. You have to do nothing by yourself.
I can't
'Cause that's part of
believe
it, but,
the impeccable A-team memory. I'm hoping for it, but I swear he brings up the abolition of segregated sex prisons when he fucking.
No, I hope he doesn't.
I think he does, but maybe I'm misremembering from another video or something. Because if you're making that argument, it completely contradicts the argument that women or trans women are unsafe in male prisons.
Later, after your court date finally comes up, whereas if you just say like right on the spot, actually I'm a woman, maybe they would disregard that. I'd be interested to see how it plays out.
And your point about how sociological research could be done on this, I would say, okay, maybe in some disciplines in which there's an expectation as to what they will find with their findings, because I know this was another point that you brought up in the video you did. I do not think in this climate, there may be exceptions, but it is extremely difficult for objective researchers and scientists to even pursue questions that go against activism. It's next to impossible.
I don't think that.
What is that based on?
Well, I have a decent number of academic friends, and
That's not a study. That's anecdotal evidence.
He loses his shit, calls her example of fucking anecdote, and then she asks, "What's your evidence?" And he says, "Well, I have a lot of friends in academia." What the fuck?
Listen.
This guy has no scruples. No scruples.
I saw a lot of Trump signs. I'm pretty sure he's going to make a 50-state land.
Why you got to throw Tim Pool under the bus? Why you got to do that? Why?
I'm just saying it's the same feeling, same energy, okay? Same energy. I got a lot of academic friends, and these unnamed friends tell me that first of all, the idea, this is so fucking bullshit. What is the chance? What is the percentage chance that Vaush has academic friends who are anti-woke that want to study anti-woke?
Zero.
Okay. Zero.
Can we go lower than zero? There's negative chance.
Negative 10,000% chance. Okay. Yes. I'm sure. I don't know if he has friends, but I'm sure that there are academic people in academia who follow Vaush. Okay, and they're all woke. Fucking
of course they are
wokies, because that's why they follow Vaush in the first place. They're not going to have any fucking insight on any of these problems because they're adhering to the institutional bias.
Yeah, that's just so kooky.
I'm only a bachelor's myself, which is hardly an academic, so I can't speak from personal experience. But
wait a second, Vaush. Now you've been calling yourself an academic based on that bachelor's degree for fucking 2 years now. Now he's saying he's not an academic?
Oftentimes there's this weird conflation where it's like the researchers are
I wish she would ask him to say, okay, as someone who does work in these fields, who does go has literally herself gone through this process of trying to get grants and do studies and all these things, I want you to explain to me the process of setting up a study.
I would love that.
And why you think why there's no biases whatsoever. So you tell me that, and then I'll explain to you what actually happens. I'll academia explain to you, okay, how these research studies are set up.
I mean, I've read a bunch of articles about this stuff already because I'm interested in it. Vaush has read none of the stuff we've read on this.
Right.
I mean, we read Quillette, but he thinks of Quillette as right-wing Nazi propaganda. He thinks Quillette only exists so that race realists have a place to publish. That's Vaush's thinking on the topic, which is completely inaccurate, and fucking Vaush doesn't know anything.
Beholden to the activists, but then somehow the activists are in agreement with almost every major medical institution in the United States. So it's actually the researchers who are the activists, in which
except they're not.
Yeah. In case you think they wouldn't be beholden to anyone because they're acting ideologically in line with the group you'd expect to be pressured.
I don't want to cut you off. Is it possible that these organizations have also been influenced by the activists?
Influenced, sure. But to the extent that it's compromised the validity of their research, no, I think that's conspiratorial. It's a long-standing.
I mean, we literally have in Canada, there was that law we covered that we went over that basically made it illegal to it could easily consider and be interpreted that anything other than affirming someone's gender identity when they come into your office as a psychologist or psychiatrist would be considered illegal conversion therapy. Okay, this is happening in Canada, but no, this is a conspiracy theory, Adam. It's all a conspiracy.
Vaush doesn't know anything about this topic, and that's why I say it's difficult for me to say that he's lying when he doesn't even really know the details of the situation. Like he may be inadvertently lying. That's happening.
He's lying in that he's giving a certainty to something that he has no certainty to whatsoever.
Yeah, I totally agree. Are you there? What happened?
This is the way he covers almost everything.
Oh, I know.
This is the Vaush Limbaugh aggressive stupidity. Okay, he says everything with 100% certainty.
I want to just let you have a chance to say, is there anything that you wanted to bring up? Because I know that we're over on time right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Oh goodness, well, we are. Time flies when you're having fun. Well, I took a snipe at James Lindsay earlier, of course, which, hardly my first. I saw some of your conversation with him. And
yeah, he was on, just so for people listening, he was on episodes 39 and 40. He was also on my podcast earlier on talking about different subjects, but more recently we're talking about political grooming and sexual grooming in schools.
Yeah.
Those are amazing podcasts, by the way.
I'll have to check them out.
And they just completely destroy Vaush. And this is why, see this look on Vaush's face right now? Yeah, they kind of made me look like an idiot. I don't like that kind of content. Why are you doing that to me? Debra.
Speaking of a lack of evidence, from what I say, and to your credit, by the way, you say this, in that conversation, but comprehensive sex education improves the lives of young people in basically every way, like in terms of use of contraception, lower pregnancy rates when you're young. And from the research that exists, which isn't much, unfortunately, but from what does exist, programs like that significantly reduce the amount of pedophilic predation against young people. You point this out too. It's much easier to call out stuff like that if you know broadly what's happening. In ignorance, predation reigns, but when young people have terminology they can use to describe what's happened to them or whatever, grim stuff like that. But the weaponization of these terms, I mean, you say political group.
This is so dishonest. There's a huge difference between, you tell some little kids like
stranger danger,
don't let an adult touch you in your private area or something.
Yeah, you don't need to teach gender identity to tell them don't let them touch you there.
Right. Or even if you're talking to kids that are like 9 or 10, they're approaching the sex ed years. I think I had sex ed in 5th grade.
Yeah.
Like, you say like, oh, this is a penis and this is a vagina and, sex works, this way. Like, you don't need to talk to them about gender identity or any of this fucking bullshit.
Not like that. And sex ed, when I had it, was they sent home the entire curriculum. And it was opt-in. The parents had to look at the curriculum and sign off on it.
Yeah,
they didn't want to get any accusations of, we're fucking getting weird with your kids here.
Yep.
In this day and age, they're like, they're looking to get weird with your kids and not find out about it. It's crazy. It's the amount of respect for parents has dropped to 0.
Mm-hmm.
It's offensive to me.
That is true.
And he's completely mischaracterizing the talk. I think Debra addresses it, so I'm going to let her go first.
Grooming. I have no idea what that means in terms of actual grooming, like the actual proper term for it. There's just no evidence of this being in any way correlated to like woke, like elementary school teachers or whatever. It's just another like big fear-mongering bit. But I guess if you acknowledge that these comprehensive sex education programs are wholly beneficial.
How is it fear-mongering if they're if they're legitimately teaching gender identity in the classroom? and people are upset about that. How is that fear mongering?
Because we live in strawman dishonest world. What do you mean?
Okay, yeah. I mean, the parents have discovered what's going on, and Vaush is going, "Oh yeah, that's okay. It's okay to tell your 8-year-old that they can. Everyone is gender fluid, and gender is not some stable thing. That's okay to tell your kid." And the parents are like, "What the fuck? What are you talking about?"
Why are you being such a square?
Right. That's not fear mongering. You can't categorize that as fear mongering. You're literally doing that. And the parents are literally upset about that.
Yeah.
There's no fear
Right.
fear mongering is making it sound much worse than it is. No, they know exactly how bad it is, and they don't like that bad.
Right.
What's the concern?
So I'm trying to think how to best summarize this because I don't want to speak for James. I have to say that conversation definitely changed my perspective on many of how I feel about this issue, because as a former sex researcher, I've always been very much in favor of sex education. I think it's very important. And like you said, comprehensive sex education, I've always publicly been a big defender of it. But after talking to James, I've realized that what is being taught in the classroom today is not reflective of these programs that were previously helpful to kids. And like you said, helping them have just proper names for their anatomy.
Why are you laughing?
So that kids
Because
are
he's all like, oh, James is saying all sorts of crazy shit and it's all bad. And she's like, James actually completely changed my mind. Like, I think everything James was saying was right.
And Vaush has changed nobody's mind.
Yes.
Everyone who wants to believe this is going over to Vaush and is just listening to Vaush and accepting this. He's not winning people over to this.
Right. No.
Yeah. Listen, I've been kind of drifting off the Lindsay train, the James Lindsay train for a while now. Lindsay changed my mind on that, to be honest with you.
Oh, no. I mean, I was following his, him talking about the grooming stuff from on his own channel. I think he's completely right about that stuff.
The logic is just too sound.
Right.
The way he lays it out, it makes too much sense. It's nefarious.
Is this on her YouTube channel? Where do we find
this? I went to my podcast app. I think I listened to. I looked at the Debra Soh podcast. Yeah. And she's done 2 talks with James Lindsay. She did one a while back, and then she did the groomer one, which was recently. And she broke it up into 2 parts, kind of inartfully. The first one kind of just drops off in the middle, but they're both released now, so you can.
Okay, I will put the link to these in the description.
Yeah.
For those who want to listen to it after this.
It is. And I mean, I agree. And she goes into it here about what's going on in sex education is anti-scientific. And that's what rubs me the wrong way. Mm-hmm. It's like if you were actually teaching them something that was legitimately had a scientific basis to it. Okay. This is ideological drivel that they're teaching these kids.
Yeah, of course it is.
I mean, maybe the gender identity stuff gets fleshed out in the future. We're kind of in flux there. And like I said, we can't do a lot of research on this because people are worried that their sacred belief is going to be overturned by scientific research after they went 2 years through a pandemic telling everybody to trust the research, right? Mm-hmm. They're fucking terrified that the research is against them.
That is part of the problem.
To protect themselves, and they can acknowledge or identify when abuse is happening so they can report it. But now it's started to work in these ideas that are nonsensical and are a way of separating children from their parents in terms of the way they see the world. They have these particular views about sexuality and gender. And it's a way of like pretty much everything we've talked about in this conversation.
Look, he has no concept of what she's talking about.
No, he's no clue.
He said like what? Like what? How is gender identity any different than the sex ed that they've been teaching for 20 years. Well, guess what, Vaush? It's brand fucking new.
Right.
Things
But
like
that's what's so dishonest about all this, and the CRT stuff and all this gender stuff. It's all different. It's all completely new.
Right.
They keep trying to pretend like this is just sex ed. It's like
The CRT stuff, they try to pretend, oh, this is just, we've been doing this since the 60s. We've been doing this for 50 years. What are you complaining about? Oh, it's completely different. Oh,
right.
Yeah, they weren't teaching about whiteness back in the 60s. Okay,
Right.
and it's the same with the gender stuff. All
And,
this gender fluidity, non-binary stuff, that didn't go home to the parents in the packets when they were opting into sex ed 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
And I don't believe for a second, Adam,
That Vaush doesn't know this.
Doesn't know about queer theory and all that stuff.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
He probably learned about all this garbage in his BA
Right.
from his party school or whatever.
At Humboldt, of course.
Yeah.
Humboldt is, I think half the student body is trans. It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Good for them. Sitch, stop gatekeeping, okay? Why do people have to have gender dysphoria to be trans? Such a fucking square.
I know. I am. I really am.
fluidity that children can be. Let's not talk about boys and girls, because if you are a little girl, you may not really be a little girl. I mean,
all of grade school is talking about boys and girls. What the fuck?
Yep.
Can you imagine? Not like your kindergarten class, you can't talk about boys and girls. What the fuck? All I remember from kindergarten is boys and girls. Boys over here, girls over here. Boys and girls, boys and girls.
Uh-huh.
Boys and girls, come here. We're doing another. Boys and girls, recess is over. What the fuck? Now it's like children. They, them.
I don't want to make any assumptions here.
They, them is over here. Not trying to assign anyone at birth.
The possibility that a child is going to grow up to be a transgender adult is so statistically small. And I just don't think it's appropriate to be talking to kids about this stuff, because it's very confusing for young children.
Yes.
I think if
Yes?
Is it?
What do you mean,
Well,
is
if it's
it?
being
Vaush says,
taught to
is it?
kindergartners, yes. I think up until even say
Kids have, especially young kids, have a big problem understanding a lot of like nuance whatsoever. I mean, I remember thinking when I was 5, I think, or no, I was like 3. I was 3 or 4, and I saw the Michael Jackson music video for Beat It. And I was dead set determined, didn't matter what my parents said, that Michael Jackson was a girl. Because he had long hair and he was wearing what I thought was a feminine outfit. And you couldn't convince me otherwise that Michael Jackson wasn't a girl.
You bigot.
I know. And I'm like, okay, you want to teach that? You want to teach that little Sitch like some sort of complex nuance about gender identity? Like, I'm going to fucking understand anything that you're fucking saying whatsoever. Like, oh, there are boys that, there are boys that are, in girl bodies that are just born that way. Like, you try to explain this to a child.
If you came
So
out
stupid.
like in an alternate universe and you came out with this as just a way to fuck with kids, this is like the ultimate way to just fuck with them.
Yeah,
you
you're completely correct.
Telling people that you can go in, go in and tell them this. Tell them that there's that boys and girls, like there's no such thing as boys and girls. Like they're so much of growing up is the first group that you identify with is the gender group,
Yeah,
the
that's true.
boys
That's true.
versus the girls. The boys
Ew,
versus
girls.
the boys versus the girls is like the first taste of tribalism. That sweet tribalism that we all love as human beings. That's sweet. Give me that sweet tribalism. Who do we hate today? Who do we love? We love the boys. We hate the girls. It's like,
Oh God, it's fucking girls.
and what to think that you can separate, like, it's just, I can't imagine childhood without that, to be honest
I know
with you.
it's true. It's true.
And not only that, the first time your parents take you out of the house and it's like you have to use a public restroom in some place. They explain, there's the boys, here's the girls, this is how it works, right? So you've been learning that. All of a sudden you're dropped in public school. Everything you've learned is wrong. Like Libs of TikTok is here. Everything your parents have taught you your entire life for 5 years is completely incorrect. Your parents have been lying to you. You can really use either bathroom.
There you go.
Like, what the fuck? You gotta listen to that talk because this would immediately, like, you would think, oh my God, my parents have been lying to me my entire life. You wake up in like a Invasion of the Body Snatchers type situation. You're looking at your parents completely differently. Why
You're telling me I could have used any bathroom this whole time?
Right. All this time you've said mommy was going to the other bathroom and she could have come with us.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. That's a great point. Why didn't mommy come in the bathroom? You know, I didn't like that I had to go to a different bathroom from mommy. What the fuck?
I know. Why is she fucking with me like that?
Mom, why are you fucking with me?
This is it. This is totally it. It's completely to turn kids against their parents. It's so fucking evil.
It is.
The backlash for this is just going to be insane.
I know.
You have a generation that is going to be voting Republican for the rest of their lives. The Democratic Party is destroying their brand.
Well, they'll go through a Reagan-esque, rebranding era like they did in the 90s.
DeSantis is setting himself up to be that guy, the new Reagan.
No, I'm saying the Democrats, like when Reagan crushed the Democrats.
Oh yeah,
the Democrats had to rebrand themselves, so they'll do something like that.
Reagan, for those who aren't boomers, Reagan won 49 states.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yep.
Can you imagine these?
Well, I don't think that will ever happen in modern history because just the way population distribution.
I don't know if it's going to happen. It's going to happen over this critical race theory, gender stuff.
Adam, our infrastructure is crumbling. Our bridges are falling apart, Adam. Okay?
I'm telling you, I disagree, Vaush. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen over this. It is.
That's true. Yeah, no, you're right. It is.
Can you imagine the Zoomers if the Republican candidate won 49 states? That would be fascism.
Pretty funny. Oh my God.
It would be 4 years of fascism. It's fascism. Fascism. The election was rigged.
That will be the best part. The election was rigged. Yes. The election was rigged.
I'm probably going to vote Republican. I mean, I can't imagine voting for this stuff.
Well, there's a strong possibility that I would vote for DeSantis if he runs for president.
See, even you, even you.
So, yeah,
that's how insane this has gotten. Yep. I got to do it for the children. I'm just gonna,
go.
I rewatched Nacho Libre recently. I love that movie. The children. I got to do it for the children.
There you go.
You got to understand. We have to save the children. We're doing it for you, kids. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adams show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.